Hey, it's Matt Grobar. Welcome back to Comedy Means Business. It's October 20th, and today we have another Matt in the building. It's the shaman himself, Matt McCusker, who you'll know for Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, Tires, Gillian Keeves, and more. Alongside his friend and collaborator, Shane Gilis, McCusker is one of contemporary comedy's big grassroots success stories, whose trajectory is uniquely his own. He went in deep on selling drugs and made that work quite well for him before starting a family and seeing Matt and Shane's take off as one of today's most popular podcasts. After self-releasing his first special 2 years ago to nearly 4 million views, he's back with a humble offering, his first for Netflix, which dropped earlier this month. Also a published novelist who's working on a second book, McCusker further diversified his portfolio recently with a series of animated shorts, which are a big passion project. Here, I talked to the Philly comic about the honing of his new hour, balancing road work with family life, and the building of a hodgepodge direct-to-consumer career. Matt, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you, man.
So the special's been out for like a week or two, right?
Yeah, I think about a week.
Did you do anything to celebrate?
Unfortunately, yes. My wife had some of our friends over to watch. She's like, we'll do like a viewing party. And I was like, please don't do that. And then she was like, well, a couple of our friends said they're coming anyway. And I was like, okay, this is going to be awkward. I don't want to watch people watch it. Well, she said like two of her friends were coming. We're like, I don't want, our other friends to feel like they got left out. So I'm like, just tell them to come. And then she had planned it anyway. It was supposed to be like a surprise. And I was like, it was like a negative surprise. I was like, I don't want this to happen. Yeah. And then I just stood like our TV's in the living room. I stood in like the kitchen as far away as possible and just watched people watch it. I like caught myself mouthing along. I'd be like talking along silently to myself. And I was like, this is just uncomfortable. But it was cool. It went well enough.
You had achieved big success with your first special, which you self-released. I was curious, like, what did it mean to you to get a shot at Netflix?
I was excited at first. It was just like, I just got a call from like my agent and managers, and they were like, whenever they're like all calling you at once, it is usually that they always joke about it. It's either good news or really bad news, and they're like, we're gonna get Netflix, and honestly, I genuinely was like, cool, but I wasn't super excited about it because I was like, we'll see if this actually happens. I don't get very excited about stuff.
I mean, you're one of these comics who's already in that great middle ground where you've got your career, you've got your following, so it's like it's almost gravy, right? Like
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good position to be in.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like, all right, exactly. If everything could stay the way it was, I'd be like, this is great, Yeah. So they're like, it's gonna be this and that, and it's like, all right, well, now I got to do all this stuff, but. I was happy though. I was pumped. My wife was more excited than I was, if I'm being honest. She was like, "This is amazing," and I'm like, "We'll see."
Yeah.
So far so good.
Good reception.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. It's really a solid hour. Like, how did you come around to this penchant for crazy intro, outro kind of?
I don't know. When I was doing it, because I have seen specials that have little intros, and I've always kind of liked that. And then when I got to do one, I was like, oh, I'm going to do, So the first time I did like rollerblading scene where I rollerbladed around Philadelphia because I just thought it looked funny. And people like really liked that. They're like, this was cool. So then the next one, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to top that one.
Do you actually rollerblade, or was that like
I hadn't rollerbladed in maybe 12 years. And I just figured it was like a bicycle where I'll hop on. So the day we filmed that, I was like, I'll get there half an hour early, kind of get the feel for it. And I was so bad that I almost called it off. I was about to be like, guys, we're not doing this. But then I just kind of stuck with it. So I kind of like relearned to rollerblade the day we filmed that.
Yeah.
Because if you see it, I'm very shaky. I almost fell a bunch of times.
Yeah, and you got to like speed skate, right?
Yeah, a couple times. I got the hang. Towards like the afternoon, I kind of got the hang, and I was kind of flying around.
Yeah, so we had discussed you working with Tyler Falbo from this group, Almost Friday. They've got a great reputation right now. There's a lot of people in the industry that seem to be talking about them. What was your experience with working with him?
He was just great from the beginning because he helped me. I had like the idea for the intro for this one, and then he was like, I've done a thing similar, and we kind of like workshopped, or we like figured out really like, all right, how exactly are we going to do this? Because I had like a vague idea. So he was super helpful with that. And then just like the whole way through was like he really cared about it so much, like even up to like the last minute of post-editing was just like, doing all this extra stuff that I was like, he really didn't have to do any of that. No, I really appreciated it. Even when we had to do the trailer, people liked the trailer, we had like the sandstorm. He did that. He was totally done. He didn't have to do anything, and we were like talking about getting the footage so we could make a trailer, and he was on another project, and he was just procrastinating. He goes, hold on, and he was like, just did it himself and spit it out.
Yeah. It's impactful because I feel like it's hard to cut through as a comedy trailer,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You almost just want to wait to watch the special.
I was almost not going to do one. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. And then, we kind of, again, talked, and I was like, we'll see what we can do. And he was like, just for no reason, was like, here you go. Because I was going to have Sean Gardini, who produces our podcast, just do it. He's a really good video editor. But before I could even ask him, Falbo was like, "What do you think about this?" And I'm like, "Dude, you're crazy." I keep saying, I'll sing his praises forever, but he really, he did a great job, and he also like really until the very end, because I was fizzling out on it. I'm like, just put it out. I'm fucking done. But he just really stuck it out to like the bitter end and stuck with it. So
what I'm getting about him is he's going to be like the next comedy feature director. Like you'll see him pretty soon.
I could see that.
Like that.
Yeah. He's really good. He's really good. I didn't realize how tall he was either.
Yeah.
It's a weird side note, but I did Zooms with him for months, and I met him out there, and I was like, everyone at Almost Friday, I was there earlier. They're all like 6'5". They're giants.
I appreciate that you're of like somewhat normal size because you really never know, and it's like uncomfortable. You're like, I had no idea that you're this like giant person.
Yeah, it just throws me off. I'm like, I didn't know that. You should have disclosed that on Zoom. Like you were just sitting in a chair.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things you talk about in the special is social anxiety. I was always curious because I'm someone with that. Like, how do you transcend that? Does that fuel your performance? Because it's a weird disconnect where you're like this super performer. It's like the most extroverted kind of job you could think about doing. Mm-hmm. Although you hear about these famous stand-ups like Robin Williams who were very extroverted.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I always think about it. Like I'll like kick myself sometimes. I'll wake up from a nap before a show and it sets in on me what I have to do, and I'm kind of like, oh no, why did I do this? Because it's like it takes a lot out of me. But I feel like for stand-up, the cool thing is when you get a laugh, it does relax you. So once you start getting laughs, you relax. But if I were to give like I had to do a reading at my brother's wedding in front of 45 family members, and I almost passed out. Like without having like someone laughing, I still can't do public speaking.
You didn't give yourself some laughs like built into it?
I was reading like the gospel at a wedding. So I should have peppered something in there.
I hope you taped that.
Yeah, no, it was bad. I was like sweating, and like the first time I had to give a presentation in college, it was like I had to really like talk in front of people. I just dissociate. Like I was like writing my name on the chalkboard and just like listening to myself write my name as I'm like analyzing the letters of my name, being like, yeah, I guess that's my name. And I'm like, what am I doing? And it's just like, I'm going to fucking pass out. What happened for me was like, I was like very, very nervous the whole time. I would do stand up. I would be like heart pounding. Then once you start getting laughs more often than not, like that adrenaline just kind of like converts to excitement where you're like, this typically goes well. So I'm excited to do it.
What was it like for you? Like if you bombed like early on?
I mean, you're talking about like the depths of the depths. It would be like it would be the craziest high of like if it went well, it's like I am the best, and you bomb, and it's like the pits of despair, like I am the worst, and then you just like ride this crazy roller coaster to eventually kind of just levels out, and you're not really either. You're just kind of like whatever.
How did you do the first few times?
First time I did stand up, I did surprisingly I surprised myself. It was only 3 minutes, and I had one joke that took like a minute. And that did well, and I just don't remember how the other, like, 2/3 of it went. And then I was like, man, but I was like, that was awesome. And then, because I got one decent pop out of the crowd. And then I did pretty bad for a while. Like, I bombed for, like, a year. Like, it was, like, 9 months straight. And then, like, I remember the first time I really did well from start to finish, and the guy was like, oh, you killed. And I was like, oh, okay, that felt really nice. And then kind of, like, I would just, get to there. Not all the time, but that would started happening more and more, but like slowly but surely. But it was a lot of bombing, man.
I feel like you hear that about a lot of comics. Even you might actually kill it the first time, but then you have like a long slog of failure immediately after that.
Yeah,
it kind of humbles you.
Oh yeah, it definitely rocked me, man. Especially when you're like starting out, because you're like bombing in like a bar in New Jersey where no one even wants you to do stand up there, and it's tough. It's really hard at first.
It's intense. So, do you have like a warm up ritual or anything?
Yeah, kind of. What I'll do now is like I'll just sit usually by myself and just kind of write like almost bullet point the jokes, just because like I just try to like memorize everything. It's almost that's how like I write jokes too. I'll like, because I can't consciously write a joke, so if I start like working on memorization, I get so bored that my brain starts to like leave and think about other stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of funny. So I just like literally like just write them down like a schoolboy. I just write and just try to memorize them, and then in the meantime, if something funny occurs to me, I'm like, sweet, and I write that down, and then I just keep trying to memorize it.
Are you just do you write on stage, or are you like, what is your typical process? Because you're like in the middle, you said, of doing that right now. What
I tend to do, because I've tried to take a lot of different approaches, because it's like, man, if I could show up every day between 9 and 4 and then like do the inputs and get a good output, but it doesn't work that way, because you'll sit there and just write, bad stuff. So what I try to do, I have like different tiers of it. The best is when I'm just doing something and then something really funny occurs to me where I go, I know it's like 100%. I go, that's going to be really great. And that's like, I just like pray for those moments. That's like, where my best stuff comes from. And then I'll force myself to do new material showcases. So then I can like, right when I know I'm going to film a special, I'll start just doing like new 10-minute sets and just like throwing anything out. And then you do like 4 or 5 of those and I cobble those together. And then, then I'll take that and be like, let me try to run a whole hour of this, and then I do a lot of the writing on stage from there.
So were there particular jokes in this special that evolved a lot from the early days?
The whole hour. Like I filmed the last one, put it out on YouTube, and I had like I think a weekend later had a show in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Helium. I was like, shit, this is going to be bad because I haven't done stand-up in a while. So I like sat in an office and like I was like writing jokes almost untested and was like, we'll see. And that went like, I think they were very gracious because I didn't know at that time. I was like, what do you do? Do you just stop for a while? And I talked to Shane. He was like, just keep going. You'll be fine. And then I talked to him a week later. He goes, I don't know why I kept going. I'm freaking out right now. So I was like, all right, I'll just push through and it'll all come to me. And then like the first show was all right. And then like, that feeling of like, this needs to be better just kind of kicked off a thing. But I had like an hour initially that like 30 or 35 minutes of that got cut out through the time. And like new jokes came in and those jokes kind of grew. And then, so I can't think of a single one that like evolved a lot, but it was really just kind of like, just keeping track of what works and what doesn't. New things come in, bump out the weakest link, and you just do that over and over until I'm like, all right, this feels good.
One of my favorite segments in this special is about debt collection. You have a great take there, but I wanted to ask you to paint a picture of you at your brokest. Someone had told me something you had mentioned on a podcast, which is like Shane had kind of busted your chops for buying one individual biscuit at KFC. Is that a thing that happened?
He might have. I've been harassed for my biscuit purchases multiple times. I one time I was in a KFC like pretty far up into West Philly on like wherever it was, like 63rd in Lancaster, somewhere around there. It was like, pretty much an all black neighborhood. And I like was working somewhere around there and I was like, I'm so hungry. I didn't have any money. So I went to KFC to buy one biscuit. And there was a black gentleman behind me. When I ordered my biscuit, he was like, Psh, you don't even know about biscuits. And I just turned, I'm like, why are you doing this to me? Right? I don't need this right now. But Shane might have, I don't know, he probably wouldn't tease me because he only ate beans for a while. So I don't think he ever caught me on like a purely biscuit diet. But no, I did get, I got microaggressed one time for my biscuit purchase in West Philadelphia.
But there was a good period of time where you were just kind of subsisting on very little, or like what did the early days look like? I mean, you had day jobs and stuff.
So I would have times where I was doing stand-up where I was making like almost an obscene amount of money, just like selling weed and stuff. And then like that would just completely fall apart. And then I would have like no money, and that would be the day job. That would be, kind of like, just kind of eating like the corner store hamburgers and like a fudge pop or whatever. So mine was like cyclical. I'd be very kind of up, and then I'd be very down, very up, and I just kind of rode that for a while. And then when I had met Shane, it wasn't great. That was like I was on the air mattress. We were in a house. We were all paying $300 a month. Like none of us really had kind of any money. But then like my extracurricular activities took off, and I actually was kind of the wealthiest out of that house for a while.
Yeah.
I was making like $1,000 a week.
I feel like you could do a whole special on the drug dealing material. The
you'd
stuff you
be
talked about on Schultz
man.
was just unreal. Like
it's alienating though. It's alienating because you talk about it to people and they're kind of like, people have very mixed feelings about it. Where they're kind of like, and there's something about it where people don't even believe it. They're like, I don't know, man. But I'd have to really like sit. I do just want to like just recount the whole thing and just write it down so I don't forget any of it because it was kind of funny. It was a long period of time.
Or like a scripted show would be also really funny, like a half-hour HBO comedy of you just getting batoned in the face.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The threat of the baton, man. Yeah, I was the last guy robbed at Club Point, I think, on the East Coast.
It's an incredible story. So you have like a really interesting background and like journey, I guess, with comedy because you did have this social work training, and it seemed like you went in and out of day jobs, like in construction as well. Was the podcast like what convinced you to stick it out?
I think so, honestly, because I was always like, I like to write more than anything. Like that's like my favorite thing to do. But stand-up was just kind of like, all right, well, I guess I can do that's like the way people do it when they have, they don't really know anything about kind of, like writing or any sort of other entertainment stuff. I started doing stand up and I would like really like it. And then I'd be like, I hate this. Cause you're doing stand up and when you're starting out, like you really are like pretty low on the totem pole of just society overall. And then like, I'd be like dating somebody and I'm like, I'm going to get my act together, get a real job. And then I'd try that. I'm like, I literally can't do this. I'm going to jump out the window. And then I would just kind of like go back to stand up, leave stand up, back to stand up, get a job, leave. So I was just always, I've been a big flip flopper in terms of like life path my whole life. The podcast was going actually pretty well when I did social work, but there was just something about, I didn't like it. Like I was like featuring for headliners and like stand up was fun, but like a lot of the headliners I met seemed like really miserable. Like I talked and I couldn't like wrap my head around it. I'm like, dude, you're making like a surgeon salary headlining clubs. Like why, what's the big problem? So I kind of got turned off to that and I was like, let me take one more attempt to like, because I always wanted to be a therapist. I was like, let me see if I can do that. And I liked the work. When I was in social work school, I worked for high schoolers and like I really, really liked that job. But the social work field was like super red tapey, super political. And I just really bumped against, them prioritizing like politics over like a human being trying to navigate kind of like, the world with their feelings and all that stuff. So I bumped heads with them a lot in that school and I almost got kicked out. And then I didn't. And then COVID happened. So I kind of got to like go remote for the last like month and then that was it.
How many other people in comedy do you even know who could possibly live a sort of white collar life? Because I know Chris DiStefano is a famous example, but like the way you talked about on Schultz's podcast, like, and it's true, it's like office life kind of dements you and it's just like there's something about it and there's something about comedy people that you just could not do that. You know?
Yeah, no.
You're a different kind of person.
And you don't, that's the thing too, you don't even realize, like I tried to work in an office when I was like 22 or 21 and I'd really grown up doing construction. So it was like, I went to an office and it was immediately apparent, like I'd have my boss come in and be like, you have to be quiet. Like you can't talk about any of the stuff you're talking about. So I would like come in and recount my weekend and they'd be like, whoa, hey, come on. Like you can't talk about that stuff here. And I was like, all right, I thought, you can talk about whatever you want on a job. And they're like, no, it's the construction site. So I always felt kind of like a freak in an office setting. And then the more I did comedy and all the other stuff I was doing, I would like try to check back in here and there. And it would just become more and more apparent until when I was on like a social work, they call them field placements. It's like an internship. I remember being like, just be cool. Don't be weird. And I was still doing the podcast at the time. It wasn't really known. I remember talking to this one guy in my office and he just like looked away from his computer and he was like, where are you coming? Where do you come from? He's like, you're the weirdest person I've ever. He was a funny guy, but he was like, thought I was dialing it down. He was like, what are you doing? Yeah. How are you here right now?
Yeah.
So, and it was really funny because I remember that guy specifically was like, you should seriously do comedy. I think you'd be good at it. In my head, I was laughing. I was like, it's funny. I have a comedy podcast that nobody knows about.
What was the process of growing the podcast? Did that take a long time? It seemed like you started it like almost a decade ago?
Yeah, pretty much. It'll be 10 years, I think, 2026. We started because, like, I remember we were both, like, me and Shane were both kind of frustrated with just, like, stand-up in general because you just get, like, dead-ended. Like, locally, it did well at first. Like, all the comedians liked it, and, like, it was, like we never did that thing where there's only, like, 2 people listening. I remember in the early days it being, like, 300, like, 200 to 300 to 500 to, like, 1,000 people listening pretty quickly, and we were like, holy shit, this is crazy. And then it kept like growing steadily to the point where like up until really had my first kid in 2020, it was going pretty well. And then Shane got canceled right as I had my first, like it was like within days of each other. And that whole it was like already pretty solid. And the cancellation was just like after it like really went well. It's like people just kind of started listening a lot more because there was all this attention on it.
Yeah.
And then from there, we just kept doing it. And,
One of the he's like, yeah, it's the craziest thing in culture. He's like at this pivot point where it's like that did happen to him, but then after that, he went on a stratospheric bent.
Yeah.
And SNL comes begging for him back. It's like
he's like the Uno reverse card. He hit it and just like spun out and went the other way. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But he worked really hard for that because he knew a lot of people were watching him, and he just kind of like plowed through and did a bunch of stuff.
How did it affect you when in the short term after that? Was it weird after that?
Yeah, not so much. I remember, like I said, I was kind of like double lifing it at social work school because the podcast was doing pretty well, and I never brought it up because like if these people know the stuff I'm doing, they'd literally have a connection. Yeah. But I kind of kept it chill. But once he got fired, that's how someone from the student council, the graduate school student council, found the article, saw my name, and then it was like a massive thing where they're like, he needs to get out of here. I was like, I felt bad he got dragged through all of that. But personally, it was just kind of like, well, I'll just bunker down. And, I was dealing with a newborn. So I kind of was like preoccupied with that and just like praying, like, hopefully this thing doesn't explode in a bad way.
Have you learned anything from just going through that process of building your audience yourself? Are there any takeaways really, or has it just been a nice journey to just like go out on your own and really make it work?
At first, what can happen, what I've seen is like kind of pitfalls you can fall into is like the whole audience capture thing. Like, say you say one thing about something, and you'll find like these people who are like, yes, do that more. And you're like, well, I don't want to do that. So you got to like, the thing that helps me not think about it too much is like, if I boil it down to the most fundamental level is like, all I'm trying to do is like make people who are bored at their jobs laugh. And I just keep it that simple. So that's what I try to do every time. And like, that's it. It's like I keep it that easy. So before, like in the early days, you get very into the numbers and you're like, this week it was 1,200, last week it was 1,000, and you're like, what did I do differently? You think there's all these like little micro changes, but it's just, you just got to do it for a long time and just try to be funny and
and be yourself and not change that.
Exactly.
So what has it been like balancing stand-up life with your family? I know you're like very dedicated to your family and sort of anchor your tour life around that, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you tend to go out on the road? Like, what does that look like for you, and how do you kind of manage both things?
Yeah, no, it was like at first when when I had my first kid, it was like it was kind of a point of contention between me and my wife because we'd be like, she was like, well, what am I gonna do, and how long are you going, how many weekends do you need to do, and we kept just going back and forth all the time, and then at some point, 'cause my wife's like very organized and very kind of like type A personality, and I'm not, and I was just kind of like, well, how about this? Like, you talk to my agents, because they'd be like, are you available this weekend? I'm like, I don't know. You have to talk to I don't look at the calendar. I'm like, just talk to my wife. And then my wife and my agent like came together in this thing where she's just kind of like, this are the weekends we have. What do you have? And they basically book my stuff, and I just get deployed. And it works really well because now like my wife will start like signing me up for more weeks. Now she's in control of it. So she's just kind of like, you're doing 3 weekends this month. We need the money. And I'm like, all right, man.
She's booking you like 2 shows a day.
yeah, man. She's brutal. So that's the big thing now. She's like, we're going to get you 3 weekends a month now because we got some stuff going on. I need, so that for me was the easiest thing where I'm like, all right, just, figure, because whether I go 2, 3, I don't want to be away too much personally, but if I'm only away for 2 days at a time, that's doable for my kids. If I'm like away for a week, that's when they get all like skitzed out. And,
so where do you go though? Will you just go and do little runs places?
I'll just do like one. So typically if I'm doing clubs, I'll go do one club a weekend. So this weekend I'll go to Buffalo, New York, and I'll do Friday, Saturday. I'm back. And then, so I try to keep it at 2 days. And if you do theater, you do one theater in a city, go to another theater, and then you're back. So it's just a 2-day trip, which again is doable.
Yeah. Have you ever been sort of just like touring all over the road? Not really.
I went to Australia once with Shane for 2 weeks, and it's just too long, man. I couldn't stand being away that long. So for me, it's like what works for me is like the 2-day trips, 2 to 3, whatever if I have to, but that's feasible for me.
Was your wife always really chill about the comedy thing, or like what was that like in the early conversations?
She was pretty chill, honestly. Like she never was like, you need to do this. She's always had kind of faith in the whole thing, which was nice. But yeah, because the first time we met, we went on a date, and I just invited her to a comedy show, which, kind of was risky. And then it went well, thank God, and we hung out and hit it off. And then, so I had been doing that. That was like the first thing we did. So she kind of just like right away was like, okay. She's obviously, there's been aspects of it. She's been like, what the hell? But now she's pretty chill about the whole thing, pretty happy.
Is she still a police officer?
No, she was only a cop for like 3 years.
Okay. What does she do now? Or she's with the kids?
She's with the kids.
Okay.
So she's working on. She has a little business she's starting up right now. So I'm excited for that. But
it's such a funny dynamic. I saw that with Sam Talent too, because his wife I think was like a doctor. And it's like you've got this super white collar wife, and then the dirtbag husband who's like making a killing as a comic. It's like it's pretty fun to see.
It is kind of funny.
Has there ever been a conversation with your wife about like how? Like the jokes, like how do you think about the stories you want to tell about your kids, if any, like about her?
I've always kind of just done it, and I don't know if it's funny, like whenever I'm like even like I don't know if this is okay, if it gets like a big laugh in the room, usually like people are on board for the most part, especially my wife. She's like cool with whatever. She just kind of laughs. I've done jokes, specifically about her and like super sexual stuff in front of like her grandfather. So I've made up a long personal policy a long time ago where I was just like, I'm just letting it rip. I can't alter it for all these people, and if they have a problem, they have a problem. But it almost like unanimously, people have been like hilarious. I'm kind of like, all right, well, I'm glad you like that. But no, I'll call her with joke ideas a lot. I'll be like, what do you think about this? And she's actually, and just like judging it based on her reaction, she's pretty good at being like, oh, that's actually really funny. Or sometimes she'll just literally be like, I hate you, and hang up. And I'm like, that's also, I know that's going to work really well. So.
Yeah. How did you decide to put down roots in Texas?
Well, so we had our, 2 kids in Philly, and we had been there through all the COVID stuff, and it was just so much unrest. And it was like really, it was getting bad because, like everyone, I think people neglected that, like, to think about when you, like, covering your face to, keep airborne pathogens out is one thing, but when you have like real criminal gangs in a place, that's a huge leg up to be able to cover your identity and go do it. So like the murder rate went up. It was like, it just was getting bad. And I was like, dude, I don't want my, there was like shootings at playgrounds that I would go to. And I was like, I'm not doing this.
So it was around the same time a lot of comics came over there.
Yeah.
A whole new scene.
Yep. And Shane was in New York. I was in Philly. So I was commuting back and forth to do the podcast. And, he had been coming back and forth. So we were like, it was my turn to do it to New York. And then I was telling him, like, I'm going to get a house in like the suburbs and like, outside of Philly. And he was like, would you ever move to Austin? And I was like, yeah, that actually would solve all my problems. I'm about to live in the woods, and that's not going to be good for comedy. So we had an offer in on the house and everything. I go to my wife and say, hey, actually, we're not going to live here. We're going to, blah, blah, blah. It was a whole thing. So it all worked out, and so we both went down there. And, man, I've enjoyed it a lot. My family likes it, so that's been cool.
What are your favorite comedy markets outside of Texas?
I like Madison. Wisconsin is good. Boston's awesome. I feel like everywhere I go, definitely Boston and Philly. Florida, I have really good things, and and I love California. So whenever I'm in California, I'm like, this is awesome.
It's a cool job to just be able to see everything and to talk to people from all over the country. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing too. When you go around, it's like most people are pretty normal. So it's like, I talk to a lot of people coming like after shows. You say hi and all this stuff. Most people are like really normal and just trying to like put their head down and get through life, which is hard. Mm-hmm. It's like not a lot of people are as whacked out about all the divisive stuff as, you would think by watching TV and the internet. Most people are just kind of like just getting their ass kicked by life and be like, I'm glad I got to laugh. I'm exhausted. I'm going back to sleep. So, yeah, when you talk to a lot of people, you realize most people are normal and pretty cool.
So your book, you wrote, was it 2018?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And that was informed by your social work?
No, that was it was a novel I wrote.
What spurred that?
I don't know. I always wanted to write a book. I would constantly try to write books, abandon the draft, and then at the time I was married, and it was my first marriage, and it was beyond the rocks, and I was kind of like, I just had a lot of feelings about it, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna just channel this into, because I was home all day because I was just, I didn't really have a job, so I just wrote a book. I was just like, I'm gonna finally take this time and bunker down and like finish a book, which I finally did after a couple of years, and I was pretty happy.
And you're re-releasing it, right?
Yeah, I had it on Amazon as a self-publish, and then I pulled that, and then, I'm working with my friend Pedro Salinas, and we're kind of reworking, taking the same characters and setting and just reworking the whole thing. And then, because he had helped me edit it, and when I brought him, me and him are going to do another book, and I was like, let's just co-author it, because it's like, we'll get it done faster rather than me submitting a draft, editing, blah, blah, blah. And he's a really good writer. So we're going to do that book and another one together, and then, which has been kind of a fun process. And then,
where do you know him from?
Comedy. He was a Philly comedian. He lives in New York now.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
How do you find the experience of like writing a book versus a set, like an hour?
I love writing books so much more. I hate writing comedy. It's like writing a book is so fun and rewarding, and like you just get to do so much more stuff. Stand up is like, it's like a shitty magic trick. You're just sitting in your house, just like, fuck, I don't like talking about this. But I will say, I have really grown to like the process of like once I did an hour, I was like, oh, this is kind of like a book. There's a point. I'm not just doing like 5-minute sets on 5-minute sets and people laugh and I go home. Like I'm actually putting a thing together. So once I got to look at it like that, I'm like,
it's a whole arc.
Yeah, and I really like the whole idea of putting an hour together. And then like it's just nice when you go around and it goes well and everyone's laughing. It's just a fun thing to do.
Yeah. So do you have thoughts about what your next book will be about?
We have like a half of a draft hammered out, and it's just like it's still kind of hazy, the exact things. So I had an idea for a book, and then he had an idea, and we kind of met in the middle, so it's still kind of up and about. But I have a couple plans, but I feel like whenever I try to discuss them, I sound schizophrenic, so I'm like, I'm going to leave it at that. The one that I had tried to do for a while was about a guy who was like a psychologist in the military during the, all of those like CIA, MK Ultra mind control things, who like went AWOL after having a procedure done, then becomes like a small town therapist. And it's just like an absolute like weird kind of mystical psycho who has sex with a lot of the wives and gets himself in a weird entanglement. But, we'll see. I think that might be on the chopping block. So, but yeah, no, I have like honestly 4 or 5 story ideas that I kind of want to do. I want to do one about a kind of like a Spanish, like a lost conquistador guy, just completely kind of like historical fiction of a guy who gets lost in the Yucatan and has to kind of like hack his way through the jungle and counter the Mayans and the Aztecs and kind of play that up. Based on
Is
like
it all like it seemed like it was kind of more dramatic stuff for the first book, right? Or no?
The book, the one was kind of like dark comedy kind of. That's kind of what I like to write, like a story, but then I think naturally like kind of like weird humorous stuff kind of comes through it. But yeah, I don't set out to write like a very comedic humor or a kind of like humorous story.
What do you tend to read? Do you have like specific writers, like novelists who you're really into?
Yeah, I got like real into God, what the hell is the guy's name? Elmore Leonard.
Yeah.
I got real into him of just like studying.
Hard-boiled kind of.
Yes, just like learning how to not be so flowery and be like, all right, like how do you actually tell the story and how do you have like a word economy or like less words is more. But who I personally really like is like whatchamacallit. I like DeLillo a lot and David Foster Wallace. They're kind of my favorites. But then I try to like mimic them and it's just terrible. I'm like, God, I suck.
Did you go to the Paul Thomas Anderson movie?
No, I didn't see it yet.
Isn't that DeLillo? I think
either
DeLillo or Pynchon. Yeah, you've done Inherent Vice, and One Battle Another is his new one, which is also one of these postmodern books.
Is it really? I didn't know it was a book.
I think it might. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe it is Pynchon. I don't know because I don't think it's DeLillo, but I don't have to guess. But yeah, they were like they were like my favorites. Then I just read a bunch of other like nonfiction and kind of like anything I can kind of get my hands on. Really.
Do you consume a lot of film and television?
No. I don't. I like it, but I just don't have time right now. I don't like if I get done my day, I like to like lay and read because it's just like I fall asleep easier. If I start watching TV, I'm like it doesn't make me sleepy. I'll stay up and watch it like all night. So
I wanted to talk to you about the animation stuff, but you got this other like radio or a scripted audio project. Like that sounded crazy. Also, like where did that come from?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Well, I always wanted to do like a weird, very like hyper serious soap opera. That's just it just would become funny how serious and off the wall it was. And I like the idea of taking the kind of tough guy, like the archetypal tough guy, and just like putting him in like weird, kind of like just like really uncomfortable and almost like antithetical situations to the tough guy persona. Like the whole thing was I always would laugh like if you did like Fast and Furious and at the end like Vin Diesel and The Rock just kissed. It'd just be like it's just like what the fuck. I did it. Yeah, I did a radio play about a motorcycle gang, kind of like Sons of Anarchy, where they create a meth that's so powerful that it like turns the whole gang like almost like religiously omnisexual, to where like all the boundaries go out and like they're starting to recruit people into this thing, and this whole town's being subsumed in this like craven, lust-fueled, kind of meth-fueled motorcycle gang. And there's this one guy whose wife gets sucked into it and he has to get her out of it. And it's literally the dumbest idea ever, but that was kind of fun to write because like the animations were cool. I had a blast with them, but they take so long. Whereas like an audio thing, it's so fast. You just write it, do the voices, and then ship it out and it gets stitched together.
And the animations also paid this guy Pedro, right?
Yeah, Pedro helped me write the animations as well. And we had a couple animators we worked with too. So
had that always been like a dream of yours to do something there?
Not really animation for me. It's just writing in general. I didn't care really what for. I'd write for TV. I'd write for like writing books. And animation was like, yeah, that could be fun because when I would try to write scripts, I'm like, I'd always be like, yeah, but how am I actually, like if someone like kicked a wall in, I'm like, I'm not going to fucking have a wall kicked in real life. So animation was like, I don't have to worry about that. I'll have people draw it. So that's where that came from. But I'm not really a huge animation guy personally. people would assume like, what's your favorite one? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really. I watch South Park, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just the writing aspect. So that was kind of fun. I like did that, and then me and Pedro. That's when we really started working together because I was like, all right, well, I've kind of brought him on board to be like, let's just collaborate on these animation ideas and crank them out.
What kind of sensibility do you find yourself coming around to with the animation? Is it just kind of a reflection of your voice as a stand-up, or like how would you describe it?
I don't know, because I honestly feel like I just scratched the surface on that stuff. I just did like a bunch of just like, my idea with the animation at first was to almost like, not free associate, but be like, I'm going to try to write a script as fast as I can and not like second guess it, just do it and put it out there. And now that I'm doing it, I kind of, through doing it, I kind of found like through one of them I liked in particular, it would be fun to kind of almost do a more, animations typically like very, almost like, it's like sensational and bizarre. Do like a very kind of plain and slow paced animation where it's more like just kind of like a guy dealing with like weird quiet, like quiet and loneliness. And I was like, that would be fun. So that's something I'm kind of working on right now.
Have you thought about like making an animation that you could sell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
like take something to Netflix or something.
Yeah, I have an idea. I'm working on with Pedro right now because we were when we were doing those shorts, we were trying to like develop ideas, and we would come up with ideas. I'm like, this is cool, but then finally I got one that I was like, yes, this is one I can for sure sink my teeth into, and then so we're in the process of doing that right now.
Do you know Duncan Trussell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if you've talked to him about that at all, because like, he had done the animated series, which was great, and it's also like in a similar plane of interests that you seem to have, like all the metaphysical stuff.
Yeah, we overlap a lot on interests. He's the man. I've done we've done a couple podcasts, done each other's podcasts, and yeah, he's such a funny dude.
Very. What do you want for your stand-up career? It seems like you're on the cusp of going to like a bigger place, but where do you want to take it? I'm sure you've done like all different kinds of stuff at this point.
To be honest, I don't care too much. Like if I can keep this up, my big goal is to do theaters just so I'm away less, because the theaters are like kind of quicker. You don't have to sit for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's like, you go to a city, you go to another city, and you're back. So that was like my real goal. So for now, it's like I kind of just want to stay the course and like put out a lot of stuff, if that makes sense. I don't have really aspirations to, if it like works out that way where like, people are pounding on my door to do all kinds of stuff, I'll obviously do it. But really, I kind of just view it as almost like a small business where it's like, if I can continue doing what I'm doing and just continue putting stuff out that I like, I'm just going to keep doing it as long as I can, really. So that's like where I'm kind of coming from it at.
Have you had conversations with like Hollywood executives about stuff, or it's not really gotten to that point?
No, like producers and stuff, but I don't know if I've tickled the ears of the executives so far, but no, just like talking to producers, and it's all the same stuff. It's like, hey, what are you interested in? And what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, I give them a bunch of weird ideas, and they're kind of like, okay, cool. And then, so really it's just kind of, I'm trying to keep it like one thing at a time, where it's like, I'll get this book out, I have this animation idea I'm developing, get a new hour going, and then kind of regroup from there. And, what I honestly really want to do is just get to a point where I can just write, like do the podcast, do stand up in like, smaller tours, and then just write books all day. That would be honestly my favorite thing to do.
That would be great. Last question would be, what do you make of all this AI stuff? Like Sora 2 has just come out pretty recently. Are you going to mess around with that, or are you kind of like not into it? What do you think? It's like promo or whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have like strong feelings for or against it, because I remember when Bitcoin came out, people would try to pay me in Bitcoins, and they were like $200 at a time. I'm like, fuck, these things are fuck away from me. I don't want a Bitcoin. So I could have had like 10 of them. So I'm kind of like, damn, this time, like, I'm not going to just, because I always, when technology comes out, I just reflexively, I'm like, fuck that. I don't care about that. So I'm like really trying to give AI a fair shot. I know there's stuff about like the data centers and consuming all that water, which isn't great. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really like the AI produced content, because it still has that eerie, there's like a really eerie glow to it that it makes me kind of shiver a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, with writing, I'll say it can be helpful for just kind of like editing, just being like, hey, flag this for typos, that I would sit there and, take an hour or so. I don't write it off totally, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like once I have to use it, if it becomes indispensable, that's one thing. But I don't really care about it that much, to be honest.
Yeah, fair. Well, do you have any other dates to plug?
I have Bricktown Comedy Club, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 10/24, 10/25. Naples, Florida, 11/7, 11/8. Comedy on State, Madison, Wisconsin, 11/14. and the Funny Bone Comedy Club in Syracuse, New York, 12/19, 12/20. So sorry to give you the official rant, but that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here. It's really fun
thank
to
you.
talk to you.
Appreciate you.